All right, I want to go over the rigging part for the mech crab guy. Last week I went over just the rigging basics, different materials we use, or joints, IK handles, constraints, set driven, all those things. Excuse me. So now we're actually going to be able to apply those type of techniques to create a rigged character. Now, regardless of the character that you're doing, it doesn't matter. You're going to use the same tools. You're still going to use set driven. You're going to use expressions. You're going to use connections, IK handles, whatever it is, kind of based on the specific rig. This is a clean model. There's nothing crazy about it. Everything is just like sitting there, and everything is just laid out here. Usually you don't get it as messy as this, but I want you to see that because obviously if you model stuff, you need to be able to go through it and kind of organize those. So before we do any actual rigging stuff, we need to start organizing all these pieces. And this will help get you comfortable with what we're actually doing, like all the different pieces and how they're connected to it. So it doesn't matter if you use the outliner or you use this out here. Some way you have to start going through the pieces and connecting them together, and you have to start analyzing where pieces would go. So I'm going to turn on my, where are you at? Shading. Nope. Viewport. I'm just turning on my ambient occlusion so I can see stuff better. There it is. There it is. Close. Okay. So now I can see the hinges better than I could a second ago. All right, so I'm going to start up here, and I'm just going to start grabbing stuff that should move together. That's all I'm doing is like what items are moving together. This is already textured. There's already lights in the scene, so you don't need to worry about that. Just worry about grabbing items and putting them together. So this item here, this is a hinged tail fin type thing. This, and this one, like all those would move together just like a door would. And then you have to make a decision. There's no right answer to this. It's one or the other. I have either these little pieces here, or I have that piece. Whichever one I choose, that's the one that's going to move with that tail, okay? So however I want to configure it, that's what I will do. I like to grab this one because I think it would make more sense that way. But no one's going to see it that close, so don't obsess over it like I am. So I take all this stuff, I group it, I give it a name. This is his right tail, flipper, fin, whatever you want to call it. Whatever you name one thing, the other thing should be named the same exact thing, just right, left, okay? I do lowercase in the first word and then uppercase in the other additional words. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And if you do it this way, it kind of makes it a little bit easier as you're grabbing stuff. These might be off a little bit. That's not going to be a huge deal. You can see these are not perfectly lined up. No one's going to see that. We're super far away from it. This. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to group that. I've forgotten what I've called it because it's been so long, so I'm just going to scroll down, right tail flipper. So then this one will just be left tail flipper. If it does help, as you're doing stuff, you can make a layer and call it done, and that way you can just hide the stuff that is done. And that way it's much easier to see where you've left off. This piece here, all of the items that are there should be all part of that, not the ground. Deselect that. And then the same thing, we have another hinge and another plate. Click, 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 click. And click. Group that. Tail, flipper. Right click on this, add it to that one. And then I'm just going to work my way down. So this item, this item, this item, that. That's going to be main body. I may add other stuff to this. I think I'll add these two also. There we go. So I'm going to group all those, call this main body. Right click, add selected. This is right shoulder. So he doesn't need a group, he's just right shoulder right now. And then I'm going to grab these pieces there. Okay, I don't think this piece here, I think I'll leave that with the elbow. So like as the elbow is moving, it's going to move that piece. Okay, so this and this. I also have some stuff over here. This is a stationary piece, this is stationary. I mean, it's like stuck to that, so I'm grabbing all that. I'm going to group all those and call this right bicep. That's done. I think I want to add this to it. So I didn't add that to it, so I'm just going to control click the bicep and then hit P and it'll add it to the bicep group. The bicep group is on the done layer, so it automatically hides it. So now I'm going to grab this, that, this. All right, that should be all those. And then I'll go into here. I'll grab the pin, this thing, this thing, this thing. Group all that together. Left, oops, right. Spell it right. Or literally spell it right. Add that. Okay, so now I have this, which is my hydraulic. There's 3 pieces here. I'm going to group those pieces together. This will be right forearm hydraulic. Because that's the part that's on the forearm side of it. I'm going to group those. This will be right bicep hydraulic. It's good to work on your typing if you haven't worked on your typing in a while. This will definitely come in handy. Do the same thing on this side. I really don't need to call that shoulder. I'm not sure why I named that one. But let's grab that, grab the stuff here. There's nothing wrong with naming every single item, but you don't get a huge benefit of it at this point. This is going to be left bicep. Assign that. That. Left forearm. Oops, and I forgot those pieces, so I'll just add those pieces to the forearm group. Control click the forearm, hit P to parent it, and they go in it. Left forearm hydraulic. Thank you. After you start naming these things, you just like forget space and time and everything else. It's just, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Just typing this stuff in. Bicep hydraulic. Robots should be doing this by now. All right. There's the eye. So this one I'm going to name. So this one is called eyeball, so that's fine. He's just going to be done. I'll just throw him in there. This is his eyeball lens. I'll do something with those later. This is his iris. And then that's his pupil. So I'll grab all those. And then this will be animated like that. Okay. This one I'm going to group and call that pupil. Okay. So not terribly too long of a process. Obviously, the faster you type, the faster you can do that. Here's all the eyeball stuff. So I am going to grab all of the eyeball stuff. Here's pupil down there. I'm going to group all that stuff together and just call this eye. That is sufficient. Maya will do this thing where if you do have something else in the world to name the exact same item, it will rename it for you. So if I called it eyeball, the exact same way that I wrote eyeball here, it may call it eyeball 1 as a way to differentiate it. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to save this scene. Named. Yes. I didn't mention this, and I neglected to because my projector was freaking out. But this file is actually on your canvas right there. So that's where you'll get the file from. So you can download it and use it. All right, so now all that's done, I'm going to hide a lot of this other stuff that I don't really want to look at right now. So all my lights and the rest of my environment, I just hid all that stuff using this lights layer. That way, as I do my rig, I can just focus on the rig without having to worry about all the other stuff. All right, so everything looks good here. You can grab stuff and move it and test it if you want. None of this is going to matter as far as where the pivots are because we're going to create new pivots for everything. So we don't need to move any pivots up there right now. So the first thing we need to do is create a set of joints. That's going to be a common thread throughout any time you do a rig. After you've named your stuff, then you need to start creating joints that you will then parent your stuff to. Where the joints are is very important. So what I'm going to do, and this is kind of an easy way to set this up, is if I just created locators where I want the joints to be, I can very easily kind of move these into position and then snap my joints to it, which you'll see. Okay, so I'm going to start off with one right in the center of the body. So I'm not moving this one left and right. I want to keep it exactly centered, so I'm leaving it right there. That seems like a sufficient enough spot for it. The middle one, you have some leeway. So whether it's back here or up here or there, or way up here or way down there, it's not really going to matter too much, okay? So I'm just going to kind of put it in the center-ish of the body. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to move it up here for this hinge. Now I need to zoom in. A fun new hotkey, all the kids are talking about, Control-Alt. And then if you left-click and drag to the right, it will zoom in. You can see the little plus sign. If you left-click and drag to the left, it will zoom out. Okay, so sometimes as I'm trying to zoom into something, I will use that. All right, so my translate X is 0. That's my left and right. So I always want this to be 0 when I'm trying to line it up to the center. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to go into Wireframe. I'm going to hold down V and middle click right on that crosshair. So now that's centered right along where that hinge is at. Then I'm just going to reset my rotate or my translate X to 0, and now he's back to being centered. So when I start to put a joint in for this hinge, that's exactly where that joint's going to go. It's not going to go off to the left or off to the right. It's going to go right in the center. I'm going to duplicate this again. I'm going to come up here. There's two hinges. They should line up perfectly so that there's no like weird angle at them. So I just need one hinge over there. So I'm going to do the same sort of kind of little trick, except this one is obviously going to be off to the side. So I'm just going to hold down V, middle click and drag until it's lined up right on the intersection of that hinge. Okay, now I don't need to scoot it down. Right where it's at is fine. So I'm just going to leave it there. I'm going to duplicate it, slide over to this one. This is a good exercise for snapping because you use it all the time. Hold down V, middle click and drag, boom, there's that one. If these get too big, you can just scale them. That doesn't affect anything, which makes it easier to see. So hinge, 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 we need those. Now I'm going to need one in the center of this sphere. As the shoulder's rotating, that sphere needs to be able to rotate perfectly around. So under Modify, Snap Align Objects, Align Objects, we go to the option box, and I'm going to align the midpoints of X, Y, and Z to the last selected object. So if I click that, shift-click this, and hit Apply, it brings it right to the center of it. So think of that as just like a center alignment tool. I'll make that a little bigger. Now if I duplicate this, shift-click the other one, and just reapply this, it'll snap the other one over there. Now I can duplicate that again. Oops, not both, just the thing there. Now I need one for the elbow. Now this one, I do want this to be centered this way and along this. So I'm going to do a couple different snaps. I try to rotate this so my camera is only looking at just that one intersection. If it's like this, it might snap to any one of these other points. Okay, so I'm kind of rotating around, holding V, snapping it there. That's good. And then I'm going to hold down V, click this arrow, and you'll see how it's snapping along just that direction. And now it's lined up perfectly in the center of where that thing's going to be pivoting from. I'll do the same thing on the other side. It should be mirrorable, so I should be able to just duplicate it, but I'm going to do it again just for fun. So I'm going to snap it. That's good. And then I'm going to hold down find a good angle for this. There we go. Hold down V, snap it in this direction, and that should be perfectly lined up. Okay, and then I'm going to duplicate this. And this is another one that just has a little bit of freedom as to where we place it. It really could be anywhere down here, but I'm going to snap it to right to that point. Okay, doesn't need to be anything, really anything too far down there, just somewhere around that point. There we go. Okay, so that's that, that's that. All right, so that should be good for the joints. Okay, so now I'm going to turn my done off. I'm going to take all my locators and just make them a standard size of like, I don't know, 0.5 or something. Now we should be able to see a rough structure of what our creature looks like. I can see the main body one here because it's centered. I can see the 2 shoulders, the 2 elbows, and then the 2 fingertips or whatever you want to call those things. Here's the back tail flipper. Here's the right tail flipper. Here's the left tail flipper. Okay, so it should be pretty obvious looking at those shapes that you can see it. Yes, sir?
You have to put locators on the other hinges, because you only did one of those hinges and not both of them.
Which one?
On the top, on the flippers.
Oh, right. So we're only going to put one joint up there because both of those tail flippers are off the same thing. Okay. Like if I'm doing a door like this, it has, I think they have 4 hinges, 3. So I would only need one pivot there because it's going to control the whole door. Okay.
I just wasn't sure.
Yep. Good question. All right, so now we need to put joints in. So I'm going to switch over to my rigging menu, go to skeleton, go to create joints. I'm going to hold down V. Even though locators are not geometry, they're considered points. So as I create joints, I can click right on locators and have the thing snap right to it. So this process becomes a lot easier. Let's make sure we're still recording, and we are, okay. So I'm going to hold down V. I'm going to click on this middle joint here. That's where everything starts. That's huge. Let's shrink the size here, 0.125. Let's go even smaller, 0.05. There we go. Okay. The size doesn't matter, but it just makes it easier to see. Hold down V. It doesn't matter which way I go. Eventually, I have to go up towards the tail. I have to go off to the 2 arm sides. I'm going to go up to the tail first. So I'm going to click here. Come on. I'm going to do this a different way. Display animation joint size and shrink that down. And then I'm going to go up here and hold down V still and click there. I'm going to hit the up arrow, hold down V, click there. Okay, now I did run into a little bit of an issue here. I'm going to delete that. I should have little locators on the sides of this so that I can grab those and rotate them. It's not that I need them, but I think it's just going to be easier to see what we're doing. So I'm just going to duplicate this, hold down V, and just snap it over here somewhere. Do the same thing on the other side. There we go. So somewhere over there is fine. It just has to be somewhere. All right. So let's do that again. Sorry, I just have to OCD about this. Let's just delete that. I'm going to duplicate this one and just change the X to negative. It should mirror perfectly on the other side. That's better. Okay. Back to create joints. All right. Hold down V, click there. Hold down V. Oops. I'm playing. Hold down V, click here. Hold down V there. Hold down V there. Okay. So that works. Now I want to hit the up arrow until I get back to this. I'm going to hold down V again. Click here. Click here. Hit the up arrow until I get back to the root. Hold down V again, click here, hold down V still, hold down V still, up arrow, up arrow, up arrow, hold down V, click here, and click there. So there's his skeleton. So now we have controls for all the things that we need to control. So let's grab our locators, we'll throw them in a group, we'll put them on this thing that just says trash, so keep them in their place. And then we'll pop open done again. Okay, so now we have all these locators gone, we have all our geometry up, we have our joints there. So now we can start connecting things together. Okay, so I'm going to go to my joints and just label the joints real quick. So this is going to be the root, be the tail joint. This is going to be the left fin. Even though I called it a flipper before, it's left fin. The joints at the tips don't matter. Ignore those. Right fin, ignore you. Left shoulder, joint. And I'm only calling it joint because I think I have something up here called shoulder, left shoulder. I don't want it to get confused. Left elbow, or yeah, be a left elbow joint. It wouldn't be knee. I don't know why I said knee before. It's either the hip or the elbow. I don't know what these things are. All right, that one doesn't need anything. This one here, right shoulder joint, right elbow joint. Okay, time to save again. And wake people up with that bright white screen. So crab back jointed. All right, so now I'm going to start connecting stuff. So the way that we connect stuff is we just parent. That's all we're doing. What items are going to move with what items? So I'm going to start at the ends and work my way forward. So my left forearm, which is right there, should be connected to the left elbow. Left elbow, there we go. So I'm just clicking the forearm, control clicking this. The order is important. And then hitting P to parent it. Left bicep, control click left shoulder, and parent that. Right forearm, right elbow, parent, right bicep, right shoulder, parent. Notice how I haven't touched these yet. Those will be done differently. So I'm not touching any of these hydraulic pieces yet. Main body will go on the root, so I'll click the root and hit P. Tail flipper, which is that piece, will go onto the tail joint. Left tail flipper will go onto left fin. Right tail flipper will go onto right fin. The lights stay where they're at. The eye will go onto the main joint. And there we go. Okay, so now if I grab that root joint, it should grab everything. Okay, except for the hydraulic, because those haven't been anything. If I move the root joint, it moves all the pieces. If I grab the tail joint and I go to rotate it, I am getting something weird there. That's not rotating correctly. You can see it's kind of like wonky. Let's grab this one and see if that works. Okay, also not right. Let me just double check my rotate tool. Nope, that is definitely off. Okay. So one of the things that happens as we create joints is that they do get this kind of like their pivots are not always lined up correctly. That one's good. Let's check this one. All right, so this one's good, so I can rotate that. That works. This one seems good, so I can rotate that. It works. There we go. There we go. Rotate it this way. I could rotate it that way if I wanted to. Okay, so it seems like the only spots that are messed up are these tail pieces. Okay, so I'm just going to grab these tail pieces and just shift P to pull them out of those groups, out of the parenting. And I just need to fix these. And this is a common thing. You will be, when you're starting to rig stuff, you'll be parenting, unparenting, trying to get everything lined up. Just get comfortable with it. It's just part of the process. So I'm going to go to skeleton, and I'm going to say orient joints. Now, if it doesn't do it, like it didn't do it here, I need to double check my options. Orient, let me reset. Yep, everything should be good, it's just not orienting. Let's go to this. Yep, that's still kind of like wonky in how it's set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to do these ones manually. So I'm going to go into component mode, turn my dots off, turn my question marks on. And then these are the pivots. So this is actually how this thing is like rotating back and forth. So I'm going to switch to a side view, and I'm just going to rotate this pivot. Okay, now what I'm looking for, and make this bigger and make that dark, and maybe if I turn this off I can see it better. Yes, okay. I'm looking for straight lines. So if you look at this little eye that's right there, from the side view, that should be gone. We should just see a perfectly circular joint right there. So as I rotate this, you can see how I've closed off the area. Excuse me. Let me go to the front view. Okay, front view doesn't really look like anything. That's a horrible view to look at. Same thing with the top view, yes. So that side view in this case is the perfect one to look at. So I want to keep scaling this in or keep rotating it, not scaling it, until that's flat. If I hit the plus sign, I can make my cursor bigger, which means that as I drag this, it's going to go in slower increments. There we go, that's good. And that should be good. Okay. So that looks like those lines are pretty straight. So now if I hit F8 or I go back to object mode, I should have a way that I can take this and pivot it just like that. And that's how it should be moving. So now if I go to these, I need to do the same thing. These are going to be a little bit trickier. I may need the geometry on for these ones so I can see it. So I'm going to switch to my side view. I'm going to rotate this. And this one I need to get in alignment with the next hinge. So if I hit the plus sign a couple times, maybe I have to go to the front view for this one. Oops. I never went back into component mode. That's why I'm not seeing my stuff. Let's undo that. All right. Back to component mode. Back to that. There we go. Back to having these things on. And then rotating. Okay, so I'm trying to get that pivot to pivot straight down that hinge. So yeah, I do have to go into like 3D for this and kind of rotate it to line that up better. And then I think in this direction, well, that should be fine there like that. Okay. I'm mainly concerned with this one just in this direction here. That's the only direction it's going to move, so I need to make sure that as I do this, that I have a straight line that I can rotate this on. And it might be that I have to parent it, test it out, unparent it, back and forth. So I'm going to grab the other one and do the same thing. This, component mode, question marks are on, grab this. Rotate. Let me see which direction this was facing. I want these to be the same so that I can, I don't have to do double duty here. Come on. All right, so in this one, the Z is facing the hinge, yes. It still has to scoot over just a bit. There we go. So the Z is facing the hinge. And the X is facing down the next thing. So I'm going to do that on the other side too. So I'll switch this off, click back on here, switch this back on. So I'm going to spin this around so the Z is facing down the hinge. It looks like it's pretty close. Let's try that out and see. So I'm going to grab the fin, which is down here, right tail flipper to the right fin, parent it, left tail flipper to left fin, parent it, tail flipper to tail joint, parent it. Okay, so we'll try them out one at a time. So this one, if I grab it and rotate, that works. Okay, so that's how that one would move. I grab this one, rotate. It looks like it's coming off a bit and definitely not rotating correctly right there. So that one I have to adjust. Let's check out the other one. All right, so that one's a bit closer. All right, so let's go back to this. And you don't have to unparent these. I'm unparenting them just so it's easier to see. If I leave them parented in and I click the joint and then I hit this, and go to Wireframe, look at all those pivots that are there. It's showing the pivots for all the pieces that are inside these groups. So I'll grab that again. Come on. That's on the left side. Find a good angle for that thing to be at. There we go. So that X is like right along that piece. That should be good there. And then the same thing with the Y. If I just nudge that so it's right about lined up with that. That should be good. Let's try the other side and do the same thing. So you'll find these little tricks as you start doing rigging stuff that you just have to use to get these things lined up. So the Y is barely in there, and then we'll do the same thing to the X. There we go. So now both of those are barely touching that surface. They both should be perfectly lined up. Tail flipper, parent, tail flipper, parent. Grab left fin. Nope, it's still off a bit. I'll have to work on that after. I can still do the other stuff for rigging. That's not going to affect it. Something's not playing nice there. It could be anywhere along that. Yeah. All right, so we'll play with that after. All right, so I am going to need a couple things here for this. So I'm going to create a couple more locators. And this has to be perfectly centered, so I'm going to use my V to snap it right to the middle of that. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to duplicate this and do the same thing on this side. So hold down V, snap it there. Hold down V, hold down the blue arrow, snap that in. Okay. Now this locator will be one that we're going to use. So we're going to call this one left forearm locator. And the other one will be left bicep locator. Okay, these will be used for the hydraulic. I'm just going to duplicate these, and then one at a time, I should be able to just take their X and just make that negative. And we'll see how well I mirrored this. It should be perfectly mirrored. All right, that definitely worked, but somehow my arm is like off. What happened there? Is this arm off? No, that arm's fine. Did I rotate that? Yes, I did. There we go. All right. So I accidentally rotated that, reset it to 0. We're back in business. Okay. This one perfectly lined up. Yep, good. Okay, so now I'm going to take these and parent them to the appropriate joints. This one's going to get parented to this joint. This one's going to get parented to this joint. Oops, that joint. Same thing on the other side. This one will get parented to that joint. This one will get parented to that joint. And I never renamed those other ones. Let me just rename these real quick. This will be right. And this one will be also right. Cool. All right, so with the exception of these, everything seems to be lined up good. I don't know why they're so off. Let me make sure my rotate tool is not, still nothing here. Free rotate, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to double click my move tool. Let's reset that. Oops. Let me set this to a long rotation axis. Is that right? No, that's not it. Object. Nope, still off. Very weird. All right. Let me just make something here that should be good. Oh, I can just use this. I already have it. All right. So we're going to do a little workaround here. So that spins perfectly, right? That spins wonderful. Same thing here. That spins great. All right. So we're going to eliminate the joints. That's all I'm going to do. Just get rid of the joints. And this is, again, just you kind of worked through these things. This didn't happen before when I tested this, but it's going to happen now, of course. All right, so I'm just going to add one more joint just to the top of this, just so I have a joint way up here. And I'm just going to parent it to that joint just so they're connected. There we go. Okay, so I have that. This will do this. Okay. So now I'm going to take my two flippers here, and I'm just going to parent them also to that. So now everything is connected. Okay, so as I do this, the whole thing moves. If I want to grab these, we'll create controls for them, but for the time being, I should be able to grab, let's say, this here, and use that as my rotational pivot, maybe. Or that. All right, we'll get into that. All right, cool. So I'm going to stop it there. That's as far as I'm going to take the first video. We haven't rigged anything yet, but we have all the pieces connected. So as I move this, that moves. As I move this joint, that moves. Ignore the hydraulic because he's not moving yet. That. That moves the whole thing. And then this one up here will move the tail. Okay. The next step I'm going to do on, let me save this again, on Wednesday, I'll go over the actual, let's create a controller and start controlling all the stuff that's there. We need to obviously add controls to the hydraulic so it moves with it. We need to add controls so we can easily move the hand. I don't want to do this where I grab this joint and rotate it. I could, but I could also accidentally do this and now it's broke. So I don't want that to be a possibility. I also want to create controls for the iris like we talked about. I want to create controls for this. And then I still need to figure out something with these things there. My solution, I don't know, I have to see. I did test it and it did work, so I'm not sure why my joints are doing it. It may have just been a fluke and everything will work. This is rotating all three directions. That's not very good. So I'll figure that out and we'll get back to that. Okay, so I'm going to save. Everything's organized. Everything's here. Cool. And then we'll go from there. Good.